Dog podcast. My name is Bee. I am the moderator and administrator for this podcast. My job is to do all the editing and recording and posting up of things and running the social media accounts. Other than that, I'm just sort of here to ask questions that dog owners ask and not trainers, because I'm not one of those. All right, and these are the ladies.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Norca the dog guru in Florida, Central Florida at the moment, training dogs over here.
Hey guys, it's Alexis, the vintage dog trainer from Northern Utah.
Hi, it's Rachel from Training That Heals in Central New Jersey.
All right, so this week's podcast is going to be on pure positive training and balance training and how they relate to each other and what each of those things are. We're going to go ahead and ask you guys to define what pure positive training is to you. And we're going to go ahead and start with Norca.
Hey guys, what's up? All right, so to me, pure positive training is when you're not allowed to tell your dog no and just kind of give a lot of treats to get your dog to do the behaviors you're desiring. The experience I've had with purely positive trainers is that that's just it. They just don't use the word no. And a lot of the times, in my eyes, purely positive training doesn't work for the majority of dogs. A lot of dogs kind of plateau after they learn the basics. And then they, obviously they get stuck in that whole doing it for the treat. A lot of people don't know how to wean food off. A lot of people don't have the right timing when delivering treats. And with purely positive, there's a lot of hiccups when you're trying to train a dog. So in my eyes, purely positive is just when a trainer just wants to, let the dog basically do what they want to do and never tell the dog no. And everything's done with treats, no pressure on the leash, no actual, guidance from the handler other than food luring. So.
Okay. And Rachel?
So I would have to pretty much say everything Norca just said. The biggest thing being not telling your dog no. To just add on to that and take it a step forward, you don't really see them doing any type of aversive consequence. It's mostly trying to redirect a dog away from whatever it is that they're struggling with, and that's in the realm of like behavioral. So if you're dealing with like reactivity, instead of addressing it head on and correcting that mindset and interrupting that mindset, they try to interrupt that mindset mostly by redirection onto like treats or movement or something like that, which typically when we're dealing with behavioral doesn't work because it's not a high enough motivator at that state that dog is currently in. I think there's definitely room in the training world for pure positive and for positive reinforcement. I think it works really great for like puppies and for obedience training, but when we're dealing with behavioral, we need something that holds a little bit more value for dogs that are struggling with those things. So we need aversive consequences that interrupt that mindset and basically shut it down. And it just does it in a more clean way.
Okay. Now, Alexis, I know you worked in pure positive training for quite a while. Can you tell us what it means and what it was like working in that environment?
Yeah, so I would say I didn't necessarily get my start in pure positive because I started training with my dog reactive German Shepherd, and I took a balanced approach with her. And then when I actually started training dogs professionally, it was at a pet store that forced me into the pure positive bubble. And it's a method that it works great for a handful of dogs and doesn't work so great for some other dogs. So my kind of experience with it went from the typical pure positive all the way through by the time I quit. They took the most extreme stance of pure positive where I was no longer allowed to say no or or teach what a negative marker was. They completely removed that from what we were allowed to do. Whereas before I was at least able to say yes or use a clicker and still use like a no or an to mark when the behavior wasn't desired. And that worked a little bit better than once they took the negative markers out of it. And it was only rewarding the good behaviors, catching behaviors that we wanted, And there was no real direction given to the dogs anymore of what wasn't okay. And that's when I got fed up with it and quit, because now even more dogs were not doing well. So I had quite a few dogs over the years that flourished, did really well, but they were kind of the happy-go-lucky dogs that didn't have behavior issues. There were a lot of dogs I was not allowed to work with as a pure positive trainer for a pet store, where they said, nope, these behavior issues we're not even going to deal with,
Turn them
because the methods don't work for it. So
You have to fit their cookie cutter.
Yes, so every dog has to kind of fit into their cookie cutter mold of, this is how we train a dog and nothing else is okay. On how to train a dog, there was no aversive tool usage, but head halters and no pull harnesses were okay. So go figure. Yeah, so that was kind of my experience with pure positive training, of lots of luring, lots of trying to catch a desirable behavior, lots of positive reinforcement, which has its place, and I still use mostly positive reinforcement, but there wasn't a whole lot of ability to correct an undesired behavior. It was just kind of try again, and wait for the dog to catch on.
I think it's interesting that they went as so far to make it a requirement not to say no. And I feel like a lot of the trainers that I know of, that I see putting out content, that they take that stance too, where they don't want to say no. I feel like in all their other videos, what I gather from that is like they're humanizing dogs so much. Like they're the same trainers that would be like, don't walk your dog in a structured walk, like give them that freedom to smell and enjoy life. And, dogs should have couch time, no matter the dog. Like, we're not mean people, we want our dogs to have the freedom and all that good stuff too, but there's simply some dogs that can't handle it. And like what I had just commented on, not every dog fits into their cookie cutter realm. And if they don't fit in it, they don't even want to acknowledge it.
Yeah. Now that leads me into, I want each of you to tell me a broad definition of what balanced training is, not a detailed one, just a broad one. And we will start with Rachel.
So I've struggled with this question, and I actually thought about this a lot before we were getting ready for tonight's podcast, because I know a big topic in our community, and I know you guys, Alexis and Norca, even hear this too, because some of our friends talk about it, is not wanting to label ourselves as balanced trainers. And I understand that argument, because that comes from the place of not wanting titles and not wanting that limiting mentality. And I get that, but I find myself still loving the term balanced training for why I define what I define balanced training as. Balanced training to me is not the fact that we use tools or the fact that we say no. It is, we do that in here, but to me, why I define it as balanced training is because we keep a balance between all this stuff. The love and affection and the structure and the rules, the freedom and the training, and just how we go about everything, affection, reward, reinforcement, consequences, balancing that all out. When you have all those scales in balance, guess what? Your dog is in check. So to me, that's what the definition is just everything that you have with your dog, all those different relationships, all those things that every good dog owner wants with their dogs, keeping those in balance. Just like as humans, like a healthy human does not need to just eat lettuce and salads every single day. We can have, the fast food every once in a while. You just got to balance it out. So for me, that's what balanced training means. It's a lifestyle that you live with your dog, because training's a lifestyle as well.
Okay.
I don't even have an answer because she just said it all.
Alexis, do you have one?
That's exactly how I view balance training as well.
I've got one that's even into the possibly more abstract than that. So I don't know if I can top that answer, but I think for me, it's very much the ability to use various methods to train the dog in front of me, because not every dog is the same. And one dog might learn the same behavior this way, and another dog is going to learn it a different way. And so I don't want to stick myself into a box of this is how you train this, and then come across the dog that doesn't work for. And then like, well, too bad, this dog just can't be trained. I've got to be able to get creative and find a different method to get that dog to understand what it is that we're wanting in the long term.
Because you came from that background with the cookie cutter. If they didn't fit, you couldn't help them. So I definitely see that being really like passionate for you, and why that would be what your definition would be.
Yeah. And I cheated a lot while I was there, and any dog that I wasn't allowed to help or that didn't do well in the cookie cutter realm, they maybe got my phone number, and I was like, hey, come to my house. We'll just do this.
We're gonna fix this.
Like, we're gonna fix this.
Come to my house, we're gonna hang out.
Like, I'm not gonna just let you go home and tell you your dog is never gonna be fixed. And yeah, if the pet store ever found out I did that, I would have been fired in 2 seconds. But
I get a lot.
I wasn't about to turn anyone away, and so I still had dogs that I just kind of worked at home and found different ways to work with them.
Okay, Norca?
Yeah, I have a lot of clientele that comes from pet store training because they got either kicked out because their dog was too reactive or too excitable or too much for the class and was not fitting the cookie cutter puppy stuff that the class has to offer. So purely positive does not work for every dog. It just doesn't. And like Rachel stated, puppies do benefit a whole lot from purely positive. But they also benefit from balance. They definitely benefit from balance. Structure. I think structure is a big part of balance training because your dog needs to understand what life is all about. And without structure and without balance, you're just gonna have a dog who just dogs, you know. And I know to me it's key to have that balance in your own life. So why wouldn't your dog need balance in their life? Why is it that in the wild dogs can tell each other what not to do and what to do through physical correction, but dog trainers are supposed to just feed treats to get dogs to do what they want? You know, it's just.
So I'm not a dog trainer, obviously. I'm a dog owner, and I am a reactive dog owner and a normal dog owner. I have 2 that are normal, 2 that are nightmares. For me, what helped me understand balance training is actually the same thing that I view it the same way I look at learning tools to deal with my mental health. So what has happened is now I have this toolbox of different types of things to do. Like I have one dog who excels with positive reinforcement. That's the only thing he excels with. And then I have these 2 who without structure are absolute nightmares. And I struggle with them every single day. And then I have my pit bull who does great on both. Like she went through PetSmart's training, PetSmart's like basic beginner training class, and she blew it out of the water. She did great. Sky went through that exact same class and she was bored. She didn't want to listen. She already knew all of it. She just wanted to sniff around or lay down and nap. There was no way to keep her engaged with the pace that they taught and what they were teaching and anything that would keep her attention. She does not thrive under positive reinforcement only. It's cranky and bored and snippy, and she's awful under just positive reinforcement. So how I view it is you have the same, like I went through dialectical behavioral therapy. They give you a whole set of tools basically to use to manage your crazy. And so for me, balance training is a whole set of tools to apply as in what's going to be the best way for each of my 4 dogs.
Yep.
And not even long term, in your day to day.
Yeah.
Every day that you wake up, you evaluate your dogs, they tell you what they need, and you're able with your toolbox to communicate that back to them. Maybe one day your dog is doing great, thriving, fantastic. Your walks are great, nothing. This story I've been telling a lot is it's becoming spring here now in New Jersey. It's been nice the last week and a half. So after the last couple of weeks before that were freezing, honestly, I wasn't getting out, just wasn't feeling up to it. Tater, my dog, wasn't getting out. The first nice day we had when we went out, even my dog needed a tune up in like the walk and just walking in a heel, not being super excited as we passed people. Well, I had all the tools I needed to work him through that day. We woke up that day. He told me, oh my God, this is a lot for me to handle. And I was able to communicate with him.
Mhm.
So having those tools day in, day out, and it's not just about tools. It's about keeping that concept of the scales in your mind, the balance scales. And you woke up that day and your dogs were like, I'm lacking in the structure today. Can we up the structure? And you did what you had to do to level those scales out.
Yeah, like there are days with 11 where he is perfect. I mean, perfect. Yes, he's reactive. Yes, he gets growly, but I can take him to Lowe's. I can walk him all the way through a crowded Lowe's on a Saturday. And while he has some reactionariness, most of the time he's just hyper alert and sitting next to me. And then there are other days where the moment he wakes up, he is a nightmare.
Yeah.
He's an absolute nightmare. And there's no way I can take him in the front yard, much less out to a Lowe's.
And that's why when Rachel said training is a lifestyle.
Yeah, and that's where I had to learn that I have to adjust for those days. There are days when Sky's just wiped out. Like if she had a day where she had high intense anxiety, the next day she just wants to sleep.
Yeah.
And it's weird because not to humanize dogs, but I understand that idea. Because if I have a high anxiety day,
it takes a lot of energy.
The next day I'm useless.
Yeah.
Right.
Energy.
And then so like not to humanize dogs at all, but at least the area I'm in, it's Utah. People have lots of kids here. So I always kind of approach it with people in a format they understand, because they, for whatever reason, they struggle to wrap their brains around dogs. So I always kind of talk to them in the approach of, you don't just reward your children to try and get them to do things. There's balance there of they have rewards and then there's consequences. And yes, with a child, you can sit down and explain exactly why this consequence happened. And
doesn't mean they will register it though.
Right. And doesn't mean they'll actually understand it. And dogs obviously can't reason, but there still has to be that consequence for them to understand, I can't do this thing for whatever reason. And that helps that seems to help people, at least in my area, a lot. They're like, oh, that makes sense, because in their realm they just want to reward and love and give affection and not have kind of the consequences.
Norca?
In the purely positive world, people get mad when you compare dogs to children. But if you have hung out with any dog, you would know that they learn in the same manner. Okay.
Yeah. They're like 2-year-olds.
This is one thing that I've seen on a bunch of purely positive pages on TikTok, where people are like, yeah, if your trainer is comparing your kid to a dog or your dog to a kid, like avoid that. Like, no, you have to compare it to
trainers do that just to make it relatable to you.
Yeah,
we know dogs are not like humans. I mean, if you told me you played golf, the analogies I gave you in the session would probably be related to golf, because that's gonna resonate with you. Yep. If you're a parent, I'm gonna compare it to raising kids.
I had twin 2-year-old boys at the same time as a single parent. I can assure you that these two are like 2-year-olds. They only understand part of what you're asking them to do. They need structure. They need constant care.
They test your buttons.
Test your patience. And you spend a good deal of time telling them you're going to turn them into tacos.
Or send them off to Norca. Yeah.
Or send them off to Norca. Send them off to Auntie Norca.
I actually threatened Benjamin, which is the barky chihuahua in the house, to send him off to ASPCA the other day. I was like, Benjamin, your bark sounds like you're trying to go to ASPCA. What's going on?
Did he give you Sarah McLachlan's sad music eyes?
Yeah.
In the arms of the angel.
Thank you.
That makes me chuckle on the inside just a little bit, that like there's trainers that get mad comparing them to kids, when like kind of a lot of the base for their arguments to why we shouldn't correct or use punishments is they've just anthropomorphized the hell out of dogs. I put
Dude,
all of
look
these
at that.
feelings and emotions on a dog, but still get mad that we
Yep.
use an analogy of, well, you wouldn't not correct a child.
Right.
to
I
save
think
its
people
life.
think corrections are emotionally charged things.
And
They're
also,
not. And if you're, and I'm not saying that to any parents listening, trust me, I've been there. I'm not a parent, but I know how I was when I was growing up. And there's been times my mom
But I
snapped
know
at me.
I was a nightmare.
There's been times she snapped at me and I knew it was emotionally charged, but that's because I pushed her.
right.
But as a parent, when you are genuinely punishing your kid because they did something they shouldn't have done, like break curfew or did something bad,
Mhm.
you are doing that punishment for the betterment of them in
Right.
hopes
to not
that
see
it
that behavior
holds-
again.
Here's the key part, that it holds value to them. Corrections for dogs are not supposed to be emotionally charged. And we do them for the dog to find value in the thing so that we can open up a way to implement new communication instructions and expectations so that we can better the dog.
Oh, girl, you need to stop talking doggy to me. I'm about to get off the live here. Hold up. Stop it now. No, that was beautiful. Those are beautiful words. Beautiful.
I think also just dog training in a whole, to be a good trainer, you have to be able to set emotion aside and evaluate from this very neutral place and this neutral mindset. And you have to approach dogs with compassion, but not emotion necessarily.
Balance.
Balance? I don't know.
Balance?
I
Um,
had to
Weird.
learn
Feel like
to
we should
separate
call
it.
it that, you know?
Another thing about like correction, because a lot of people, when you say correct your dog or discipline your dog or punish your dog, like all these terms are just like all over the place. Okay, they're just all over the place. A correction doesn't mean you're abusing your dog.
Mm-mm.
Disciplining doesn't mean you're abusing. Discipline it's a way of life. Discipline is just the way you're living life. And a lot of people, when you tell like, oh, discipline your dog, it's you're gonna punish the dog. No, you gotta tell your dog what to do. Some
Yeah.
structure in there, deliver communication properly. But a lot of the times people, when you use the word correction, it's like, well, what do you mean correction? Like, how are you gonna correct my dog? How are you disciplining my dog? And I think there's so much stigma behind
The
Just-
words. It's the words.
it. Really is.
I don't think a correction even always has to be like a prong or an e-color correction, depending on what you're dealing with. It could just be limiting freedom.
Yeah, like
that's
11 bit me yesterday. I think it was, he bit me yesterday. And now he has zero freedom and he gets to go nowhere near furniture and
Right.
doesn't get any affection right now because
Right.
he bit me.
That's implementing structure, and that's switching the lifestyle up. Obviously what was going on wasn't working. My favorite
getting
thing is
comfortable.
like when I talk with owners who are reaching out for training, or I'm doing like my consults and it's an owner that's on the fence about the fact that we use tools and we might have to potentially use tools with their dog. They're like, oh, I don't know how I feel about that. And then they're like, you know what, can I ask you a question really quick? Like down the line, like 10 minutes later in the call, they're like, my dog always like pees in the house a lot, so I throw him in the crate. Why are you okay with that, but you're not okay with communication?
Or setting a crate schedule. That's not a timeout.
Throwing your dog in the crate for that, and that's just one of many examples of like bad communication and bad punishment in my opinion, is your dog not understanding what the heck just went. They have no room to grow from that.
Yep.
Your dog doesn't understand timeout without communication, and it has to be timely and it has to hold value. So, I mean, you look at the older generation, which is it's a lot of the generation that has an issue with, what's going on. Like I think of my parents who, I'll be honest, they're not completely on board with how I train dogs. My mom's like, oh, why do you got to do that? Oh, no, the dog doesn't deserve it.
Mhm.
But when we were growing up, guess where my dog got put every single time they did something questionable or wrong? In the crate.
Outside.
Yeah,
Ours were
or in
outside
the crate.
dogs.
And I think that speaks to a lot to how training has changed over the last couple of decades.
Yep.
I mean, and you factor in how dogs have received communications. You look at genetics in the wild and being raised from their moms, they get communication, they get corrections, they're correcting each other. 20, 30 years ago, we were very much, it was like compulsion style training because the lifestyle of dogs was different. A lot of families didn't have dogs. It was mostly working dogs. So it was mostly police dogs, military
Guard
dogs, service dogs. Then we started to start having dogs in the backyard. So then we had to train them a little bit. Then dogs moved to inside the house, and we only had one dog in the whole family growing up. So we'll deal with it. Oh, Fido got out of the house again. He's running down the street chasing the mailman, whatever. There was like no training at some point. Then the lifestyle changed again, where now Karen has to adopt 17 dogs every year that need training.
And humanized all of them.
Yeah. So now we have like so many different variations of training, and it's gone through many different forms throughout the decades. And I think that that's something interesting to kind of shed some light on too, because it shows that we're definitely growing and we're coming to more of like, we're understanding dogs more, but we as humans are also to blame why all these dogs need this communication, this training, because we want them in our lives. We've taken them out of the wild and we brought them into our house, and we brought them fuzzy dog beds and expensive food and water fountains and bedazzled leashes. But now we don't know what to do with them.
Yeah, and most clients that I go like to visit and just to do consultations with, it's just that they don't know what to do with their dogs anymore. Like dogs are like babies now. Like you cannot yell at your dog. You cannot say no to your dog. Your dog sleeps on the bed. It whines in the crate, so we never put it in the crate. Like people are just like excusing babying and coddling their dogs now. Before it used to be the dog's outside, it's fine. It's outside for 4 days. It didn't even eat. Like people didn't care about dogs like that. And now it's like they're part of the family now. It's so different because the owners are humanizing our trainers. You know, the balanced world trainers, the real balanced trainers. Our training's evolving. Like, I don't know about you, but my training style has changed over the years, and I'm learning so much more from some new trainers, and I'm always hungry to just learn more. And why does this work for you, but it's not working for me? And I'm just constantly just looking to learn new things. I'm not that cookie cutter trainer. I'm not well, this is how I was taught, and I refuse to learn any other way.
Yeah.
I want to learn. I want to know more. I want to get into different fields of dog training because God, Jesus, there's so much dog training stuff out here that you can go into. A person can say I'm a dog trainer and be a disc frisbee trainer or a behaviorist or a fucking trick trainer, or there's so many just fields when it comes to dog training. Like you really need to know what you're looking for as an owner. You need to look for something that's gonna be beneficial for your dog. Okay, you need to look for that trainer. If you need to see 5 trainers and pay for 5 consultations, do it, but don't invest money in the wrong person.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't invest money because you saw a video online of a trainer that doesn't even train dogs anymore. And it has 1 million hits and they have a bunch of clients and it's a big company with a lot of advertisements. And then you get a trainer who's only been training for a month.
Right.
It's not.
Yeah, I researched before I decided to move forward with hiring trainers.
Who are you hiring?
I started with Jerry. Jerry's a Levin's trainer. And then from Jerry, I found all of the rest of you and Jonas. And having watched your results before and after is why I decided to bring Skye to you, because you're a different style than Jerry is. And Jerry's style is working with 11 despite setbacks. The setbacks are usually my fault because I was so focused on getting her off her meds. Right. Sorry, my problem dogs are on either side of me on their place beds, asleep. And it was like researching, because I searched my area first for a balanced trainer.
Nothing, right?
No, there's balanced trainers. Okay. None that I'm going to take my dog to.
Right.
And why is that? As an owner, why wouldn't you take your dog to the one?
I cannot see proof. All I can read is online reviews. I cannot get a hold of them to have a conversation with them. Like I've had conversations.
All red flags, guys.
I've had conversations with Alexis. I've had conversations with Rachel. I have conversations with other trainers. And being able to know how you communicate the style, seeing before and afters with your dog, seeing what you do with them, it makes a huge difference. And it makes it
personable.
It makes it more personal. It makes it so that I understand what you're doing, because I can look at videos, even little short ones, and see how you're handling a dog. That makes the difference for me, Because
Yeah.
if I tried to put 11 into the hands of a pure positive trainer, they'd tell me to put them down.
Right.
Even the three of us as balanced trainers, all three of us do stuff different. There's things Norca said that I'm like, I don't do that. But I respect her because her results speak for her volumes.
As
And I'm a
trainers,
results driven person. If you're a pure positive trainer and you show me results, much love to you. I'm not going to sit here and hate on you just because of your title. If you get results, kudos to you. Results speak.
as
I'm
long
not
as
gonna
they're
sit here
humane
and argue it.
results, as long as they're humane results, because some people are out here getting results, but they're not.
Humane results. If you're, there, and that's the thing. So we could talk, maybe this is something you could comment to, be as you shopped around for trainers. There's results. There's people that could put stuff out and be like, here's my dog's results, but you can see in the video that the dog is like shut down, did the behavior stop? Yeah, but they're not thriving.
It's not just that, it's also I need specifically behavioral
Mhm.
and trying to find trainers that will show me what a dog was like beforehand and then show me an adjusted, balanced, happy dog after. That's what's important to me. Is my dog going to be happy still? Because Sky is my favorite baby. She is my dog. She is my heart dog. She is the one that replaced Sparky. She 100% my baby. So I need to be able to look and see the results of Norca's training to see if those dogs appear relaxed. Do those dogs appear adjusted? Do those dogs appear
happy and just overall confident? Because I've seen there was a balance trainer in Milwaukee that I would never refer any of my clients to. I know I have two people that I'm like, yeah, go to this person in Milwaukee. Yeah, go to this person in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
This third one, he has the biggest business in Milwaukee as far as like balance training goes. And I would never recommend anyone because he's forced. He's not.
It's borderline. Yeah, it's borderline compulsion at that point.
Yep. The dogs are miserable. It's avoidance training, escape avoidance training for all of his training because he e-collars, muzzles, prong collars the dogs immediately. Like, oh, your dog bit somebody? Okay, put a muzzle on, put the prong collar on. 50. That's not balance training. That's not rehabilitating a dog. That is shutting a dog down with your macho man fucking over dominant, theory there. It's not training a dog with behavioral issues. You have to build trust. And there's trainers out here, they don't build trust. They just go straight to correction. They go straight to force. They go straight to yanking at a prong collar.
Right.
And that's not how you deal with dogs with reactive issues. It's just not.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to shed some more light on that because I think that'd be really useful for people that are listening, for those that are getting into understanding training, those who are trying to navigate this training world and like they're looking for trainers. So we've kind of defined what balance training means to us, and the reason why is because this is what we do for a living. So it's what our companies hold value in. For those who don't know, compulsion training would be where they're kind of using the methods of balance training. So using tools, training tools, but they're very heavy-handed. So it's pretty much about correcting, and that's where you start to not have any type of positive reinforcement. So they don't do like what any of our companies would do and build the dog's confidence. Take an hour to spend on doing up exercises. It's really about almost shutting the dog down, and it's being really alpha and heavy-handed. It's an old mentality. It's the old way of styling for those of you that don't know. And it's definitely something you want to be careful of when you're navigating this industry, looking for a balanced trainer. And this is why balance training does get such that bad name, is because you do unfortunately have people out here, and 9 times out of 10, this is why I talk about having a feminine touch in training. It's a guy, and I don't mean this in any sexist way, but in my experience and the people in our area, it's a guy. It's normally like the ex-working dog trainer, like the ex-cop, something like that, and they're super heavy-handed. Yes. Super heavy-handed. And I'm not saying that to be nasty. If you know me in real life, you know I'm not nasty.
It's facts.
But it is. It's like it's this alpha dog mentality, and it's not something that you want to look for. Yes, do dogs sometimes need to go on tools right away? Absolutely. Yeah. But it needs to be balanced out.
Condition.
With reinforcement and conditioning and communication. So if a dog is just constantly getting like put down, beat down, told no, they're undoubtedly going to shut down.
Yep.
And those are your dogs that look like
And they'll work, they'll train, and they'll work, but it's that escape avoidance. It's that not even wanting to do it. I'm just going to do it because I know I'm going to get in trouble. It's not the want. The dog doesn't want to do the work because they're being forced to do the work. So my biggest advice for you followers out here listening to us here talking dog stuff is to really sit down with the person you are trying to hire. Sit down. I don't ever mind sitting down with somebody for 45 minutes and, oh, you don't want to pay for the consultation? I'll give it to you for free. You're going to sit and talk to me. And I promise you, by the end of the session, you're going to hire me because I'm going to tell you what you need to hear. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I tell the truth. I tell you exactly what you have to do, exactly how you have to fix it. And if you neither agree or you don't agree, and that's it. And 9 out of 10 people sign up. And if I know that you're giving me a little over a $40 consultation fee or a $50 consultation fee, I'll waive the fee. By the end of that, I'm going to have a client, though. It's not especially if it's a really serious behavioral issue. It's I'm not one to turn dogs down, especially for behavioral issues. So I know what to say because I know how to work these dogs. So what comes out of my mouth is not a scripted little, commercial. This is how I'm going to sell this to you. It's not advertisement. It's just, this is what I see. This is what I assessed. And your dog will need correction. Your dog will need a prong collar. Your dog will need a slip lead or an e-collar or a fur saver or whatever other tools I have in my box. Your dog's going to need that. But above everything, your dog needs positive reinforcement and motivation and consistency and repetition and structure in order for this to work. And that's for all dogs, guys, even the well-behaved ones.
All right. So I know, Rachel, you looked at a couple of studies that you want to talk about.
Ooh, facts, baby. This is the part where we talk facts here, guys.
We got 30 minutes.
I wanted to kind of make sure that we did not just put our opinions out here. Because yes, these are opinions. The only thing here that is facts is go to our social medias and look at our results. And that is, there's your results. You can see us working. You could see dogs not shut down. You could see the tools working and dogs thriving. But what we're talking about right now is a lot of our opinions, and it's a lot of loose definitions. So I wanted to look at this from a different perspective. So as a balance trainer who puts out content onto the internet, I do receive a good amount of backlash from people that are not comfortable with the training method, or from the other side of the industry that only focuses on the positive side of training. And a big thing that I get always tagged in, or always people tell me to look up because obviously I'm not educated enough on what I'm doing, is these studies. And these are the studies that talk about how our method is not good.
What year did these studies come out in?
It's a great question, Norca. It's a great question. So the first one.
Over to you, Rachel. Over to you.
The DEFRA study, which is one of the biggest studies that always gets talked about, that was in the early 2000s, I believe. The other study, this is the one I always get, people always are like, you need to read this study. You don't know what you're talking about. This one came out in 2004, almost 20 years ago.
In 20 years? Do you know how things evolve over time here?
This e-collar has changed in the last 3 years, the technology behind it.
When I first started with them, they were called the mini Einsteins.
I didn't know that. So I wanted to break this study down a little bit. And I encourage everybody and any trainers that are listening, when you feel like, because I know how I felt the first time somebody threw a study at me, I was like, oh, they're talking big words there. This is how you break down a study. You need to make sure that there's truth to it, and that it's done in an ethical way, in an unbiased way. Mm. So there's a 2004 study from the University of Utrecht, I think is what it is. And the study's called Training Dogs with Help of the Shock Collar, Short and Long-Term Behavioral Effects. So the goal of this study was to see if dogs basically shut down from the usage of these tools. Now, here's the problem with this study, because a lot of positive trainers always quote this study. First of all, the method of the study cannot be replicated because they don't explain how they use the e-collars in this study. Right off the bat, that writes it off in integrity wise.
Was there any conditioning going on?
Is there any conditioning? What number were they correcting the dog on? Was it continuous? Was it a tap?
What
What's
brand
the brand of the
e-collar?
e-collar? What's the person's background that's using the tool? Do they know how to use it? Were they educated first?
How many trainers were able to work with the dog? I mean, yeah.
Exactly. There's no method breakdown whatsoever. There's nothing. Yeah, big red flag right there.
We need to do the study all over again.
Fine. 2 minutes in.
Well,
2 minutes in.
Right. Well, in order for a scientific study to be proved valid, it has to be able to be replicated.
That actually doesn't technically qualify as a scientific study, period.
Right.
Oh, I love you guys so much right now.
Right. So let's continue, shall we?
Drop that mic.
17 more pages.
Drop the mic. Just drop the mic. We're done.
So right in the introduction, what they wrote was this. And I think it's important that this is noted because the scientist of the study wrote this. And I want you to remember it for when I read their conclusion paragraph. So in the introduction paragraph, they write, however, the results of this study cannot be applied to actual dog training situations for several reasons. The laboratory dogs did not expect the punishment at all. So no conditioning took place. Therefore, their reactions could be stronger than those of dogs in training. So what do we get from that? They did not condition these dogs.
And they were just shocking dogs.
They were just shocking dogs. So here's what they did in the study, just to make sure I speak some truth to it. They tested these dogs in 3 ways and at 2 different locations. They did all 3 tests in a park, and they did all 3 tests back at the facility. They had 3 groups, a control group, a working group, which were previously trained police dogs on the e-collars. And then they had a group, the control group did not receive any corrections. And then they had the group of dogs that had never been trained on collars that they had corrected.
That weren't conditioned.
That weren't conditioned. So what they did were 3 tests. The first test was walk in a straight line. Okay. And they just randomly corrected the dog for that. They weren't really asking the dog to do anything. They didn't teach the dog to walk in a heel. They didn't set up any expectation at all. They just randomly and timely corrected the dog. The second test was to do bite work. And the third test was an agility course. So there's no method to the madness whatsoever.
What does agility have to do with obedience and e-collar training? You can't even, I would never even put any adversive tool on a dog just doing agility. That's all treats and fun and running. That's not.
I have some opinions.
I'm so mad. Go ahead. Go ahead, dog owner.
Okay. I am a dog owner, not a dog trainer. Let's start there. 1, this cannot be a scientific study if they do not detail down to every single movement what is done. It completely voids it as a scientific study, period. Read about the scientific method.
Did you guys hear that out there? Throwing around
just because a scientist wrote it does not
mean that it's a scientific method ran experiment. It is not an experiment. It is torture.
Bias.
2, if you are taking a dog who has never been trained and has never
been conditioned
how to do something, is in a situation that it's already anxious because it doesn't know why it's there.
This is a dog owner, guys, not a trainer.
And then you decide it needs to walk in a straight line. It doesn't know how. It needs to do an agility course. My trained dog doesn't know how to do an agility course.
Right.
With an e-collar.
No average owner is going to put their dog on an agility course.
They don't even say if the person handling the dog knows how to do these things with the dogs.
There's no video proof. I don't want it. In
Like,
2004, camcorders existed. Flip phones had cameras on them. YouTube was around, so you cannot tell me that there's no video proof of this study when it was done in 2004.
If there is video proof, chances are it has been tucked away and hidden.
It is. They did film the whole thing.
High numbers on untrained dogs,
right?
But had no idea what was going on and were already scared and confused.
Exactly. They did film the whole thing. What they did, because very quickly what the study turned into, as you read through the notes, is it went to Okay, all they started observing was the 5 seconds after the correction to see what the dog's body did. Did the ears tuck? Did the tail tuck? Did their pace change? Did
What
they
level was
redirect?
his e-collar on?
Did they redirect on the handler? So all they were tracking in terms of discomfort was what the dog's physical reaction was. Well, yeah, we know as trainers, the dog's going to be uncomfortable when we correct them.
Mhm.
It's kind of the point in most cases.
And if it's not conditioned, it's not only going to be in pain or in discomfort, but it's also going to be confused. Like, what
Right.
the fuck just happened?
Why are they?
did
And
this
like
happen?
the biggest thing, yeah, exactly. If a dog, like, and let me just clarify further. No, I don't want dogs to be uncomfortable if we're just doing like conditioning work or we're just working on like place sit down and they broke the command. But if a dog is going into full blown like reactivity and I have to correct because they're about to redirect, yeah, I expect that to be uncomfortable.
Yep.
I want it to hold value.
And I'm
So
glad you
every
bring
day.
comfort into this. I'm glad you're bringing comfort into this because this is something that a lot of people, this is why people avoid balance training and just training tools and periods. It's that comfort. Are you comfortable when you go to the gym to change your body and your life around?
No.
No.
Are
Are you comfortable
the
when you
next
go to
couple
therapy
days?
to help your mental health?
Are you
Exactly.
comfortable showing up to your therapist to sit there and talk the first time? No, but
No.
over time, it becomes conditioned and it becomes a routine and it becomes part of your life. And then it becomes a little easier to sit in a room and talk to a stranger because it's no longer a stranger.
Right.
So
Right.
it's not, you guys need to like really get off that making my dog uncomfortable thing. Your dog needs to be uncomfortable. Your dog needs to be stressed out in order to learn. Your dog
Right.
needs to make mistakes in order to learn. So
All creatures that are learning are going to be stressed in the learning process, whether it is a dolphin learning to detect bombs,
what was
a
it?
dog
BF
learning
Skinner?
how to not react to
conditioning?
something,
Is
a
it
cat
proper
learning to
conditioning?
sit and not attack people when it's trying to eat.
Right.
Like,
Lost. Yeah, BF Skinner was the one that did the operant conditioning, like the positive reinforcement and
Yeah.
in the brain. And I think that's an interesting study. You guys should go and read up on that because it's even us humans learn from that conditioning.
yeah.
Right.
If
Right.
you touch a hot stove, it burns you.
Animal in this earth.
Yeah,
learns from it.
exactly. So just to tie up that bogus study, because it does get quoted a lot. And for those of you listening, when you do hear about that study, which is training dogs with the help of shock collars, short and long-term behavioral effects, it's one of the most quoted. It's in the top 3 of the studies. If you go to like banecollars.com, which is this big movement to make them illegal in the United States, it's one of the most quoted of the studies. I get thrown this study all the time. Not just this study, but any study somebody throws at you, you now know to read. And this is what you should be looking for, because don't be so easily swayed just because a guy with a PhD
Study was
did some
made.
studying. Because listen, this guy with the PhD also said, being trained is stressful, that receiving shocks is a painful experience to dogs. And that group S, which was the dog that was getting corrections, learned that the presence of their owner or commands announces repetition or reception of shocks. So that's how I know this study's bogus, because the dogs were not properly conditioned and they started to associate the shocks
with the
to
human.
the presence of humans.
No. And
So
that's
it just
another
makes the
thing.
whole thing bogus.
That's another thing
Also,
that happens.
it talked
with the
about
dog.
actual animal abuse in this study, and I didn't want to really quote any of that stuff, but there was physical abuse taking place that they wrote about in detail in this study. And
But they couldn't write in detail what they were doing with the freaking training.
I know,
that they were being
they
excessive.
couldn't
with
write what
force.
number they were correcting on, but they could go into detail about physical abuse. But they couldn't. Yeah, I know, and I was amazed.
And purely positive trainers quote this study.
Yes, I swear.
Have they read it?
No.
That's what I'm saying.
Have they read it?
No.
It's idiots following idiots.
Oh my god, my brain hurts. Like,
What do you think,
the
Alexis?
thing about e-collar training is that I have clients who use the mini educator. I have clients who I've trained and taught and coached through the process, and then I go see them 4 lessons later, and they're laughing at the fact that, hey, look at, all I have to do is show my dog the button, and look.
Yeah,
That's not funny. That's not. You're implementing fear. You're pressing the vibrate to scare your dog because it works. That's
Right.
not e-collar training. It is not proper e-collar training because you use the beep and you use the vibrate. Those scare your dog. Stimulation and proper conditioning, it's just that. That's how that collar works. And a lot of people are out here going to e-collars, just to stop their dogs from doing something. And you out there listening with the dog ears out here need to understand that e-collars are not to stop your dog from doing something. They're to make your dog better once they know their foundation training. So once your dog knows sits are sits and knows their downs are downs and place is place and heel is heel, then you can start to add the tool as a reinforcer and an insurance policy almost, okay? When I put an e-collar on my dog, it's because I know this dog's going to be off leash. It's not to stop my dog from doing something. It's because I know for sure that I could teach this dog that more than 15 feet away from me is too far. And if I press this button, I can have you come right back to me at a 2, 3, 4, okay? Not at a 20, 30, 40. I'm not trying to shock my dog. I'm not trying to have my dog go like this in the air. It's communication. It literally is. And someone else today, a positive reinforcement trainer on TikTok, posted that tools don't make your dog better. Tools do help your dog, become better. And some dogs do need tools. And these tools are to communicate with your dog. And they are a communication tool. E-collars are communication tools, just like your cell phone is a communication tool, and e-collar is a communication tool to a dog. And now how you introduce it, how you condition it, how you implement your training will affect how the dog reacts to that collar. My dogs are not afraid when I put their collars on. My dogs don't run away because I don't use that as a negative reinforcer. I use it as a positive reinforcer.
If I pull out my prong collars, my dogs lose their mind excited because it means they're going somewhere. They get to go do something. They get to go have an adventure.
Right.
They may not love it. They don't like their prong collars,
but they put it
on
and
they love that the prong collar means they get to go do stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's exactly how it should be for the e-collar too. I hate when my clients say, "Oh, all I gotta do is show him the button and he'll stop." No, you don't torture my dog. Don't torture my dog. Once I train your dog, he's my dog. So don't torture my dog.
Alexis, what are you trying to say?
Yeah. Hey baby, how you doing?
Hi. I'm still here. I need to learn to just talk really loud.
Just get in. You're talking with 2 really loud personalities. You got to butt in.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I also think it's really important to note that sometimes the tool isn't always necessarily for the dog even. Sometimes the tool is there for the owner.
Oh, yeah.
So as an example, I have a dog I'm working with right now. She's a 6.5-month-old Aussie Doodle. So high energy, high strung. She's super sweet. She's the one that keeps Snapchatting you all those pictures of. I'm perfectly capable of handling her on a flat collar and leash or on a slip lead. Her family, though, can't.
Right.
They've had back surgery, emergency gallbladder surgery. They've had COVID. Like, they are physically not capable of handling her on a flat collar or on a slip lead. And so as soon as she hit 6 months and I was comfortable conditioning the prong collar, we moved her over to a prong collar.
Everyone please notice that she said I waited till 6 months to introduce that versatile tool. Waited till 6 months. Your dog should not, any younger than that, they don't need a prong collar, just in case you didn't know.
And she was a dog at that point. I'd been working with her for, a couple of months, kind of sporadically because of all of the health stuff going on. But at that point, she understood leash pressure. She understood what a place command was. She knew how to walk. And so it was a really easy transition to condition that prong collar. And it was a life changer for them.
Right.
They went from 1 week of asking me if they should rehome this puppy to the next week sending me videos of her hanging out on place while they're watching TV.
Right. That's amazing.
Yeah, get it, girl. Yes.
So
that's a really great point that you bring up.
Yeah. So they went from considering rehoming this puppy to like ecstatic and actually enjoying having her there for the first time since they've got this puppy. So they went from completely overwhelmed to, we went to PetSmart this weekend and it was great.
That's amazing.
It's awesome. So sometimes the tool is there for the benefit of the owner because sometimes they physically have a limitation, or it could even be something as simple as my dog weighs 10 pounds more than me or 10 pounds less than me. Or if
Right.
I was working a different dog, they could weigh more than
Yeah,
me.
power and strength.
Um,
We have a big play.
And so sometimes it's as simple as helping a small person that owns a larger dog, or dealing with a physical
Disability or restraint.
disability, or whatever it is. So sometimes it's not even necessarily the dog that needs that tool to succeed. It's the human that needs the tool to help them better communicate to the dog, because they're the person that has to live with it. I'm not the one that has to live with the dog. They have to be able to live with and enjoy life with that dog.
Talk doggy to me, girl. Woo!
All four of mine are conditioned to prong because I have days when I can't close my hands all the way. And because Cowboy weighs 70% of my stepkid's body weight, and
Cowboy
they are spindly limbed. And he's a big boy.
Yeah, I had a guy who didn't have control over his left arm, so he couldn't have his dog heel on the left or hold a leash on the left. So he collar trained this. He was a service dog too, which was great. He was reactive to children. I mean, I met this guy at a mall, and I was like, "How did they even let you in this mall with this dog?" Like, that's how bad this dog was reacting to people and kids, and just totally out of control. And we collar trained the dog. I want to say he spent a good month kind of training on and off with me. He did a 2-week boarding training, then he did some lessons after. And I mean, he continued to train over the years, but it was just awesome to see him being able to handle his dog without him needing to, put his right arm on the wrong side or whatever, It was just nice to see that with one hand, he can control everything his dog does. An off-leash service dog who's heeling perfectly next to the owner at all times.
That's what I want her to be.
Girl, you're gonna have to be. We're gonna have to talk. No, I'm just like.
I completely agree. Like, you have to evaluate the case, not just for the dog, but you have to evaluate the owners too. And there's definitely cases where, like, I could tell the owner was struggling just with like a leash and a slip lead, or a leash and a prong, and like they really needed that extra umph of like an e-collar. They needed an upgrade in their tools to give them. But I think, not to contradict that, because I do agree with it, I kind of want to kick the conversation in the opposite respect of, even though we're balanced trainers, making sure we don't rely heavily on the tools, and making sure our owners also know not to rely heavily. And I think this is where the industry can definitely start to bridge together more, because obviously the positive side does work. We use it, and they do it, and they do train dogs. Because there's dogs I've done like 100%, positive work with them. It's just been like a slip lead. There's even been a dog we trained on a harness once for like pretty much shits and giggles. So
for
I think
scientific studies, Rachel.
Scientific studies.
I think we need to talk about that too, because a big thing that I'm making sure of is, yes, I will set an owner up with the tools if I feel that they need it, because it's going to make it easier for them. But I've also been getting in the habit now of like making sure the owners actually need all these tools. Is it going to kind of be a crutch that they rely on?
Yes.
Are they going to undervalue the relationship and that side of the training? Because guess what? We do use tools, but we don't just use tools. We do training, and owners got to do training too. Owners that are listening, you have to do the work in the training too. You can't just hit a button and your dog understands what's going on.
Maintenance is key.
So a couple of thoughts. So one, I always think of tools as like the icing on the cake or the cherry on top. That's kind of the last thing that gets done.
It's not the creme de la creme, though.
Yeah, like that's not the foundation. And then like, I don't know, 95% of the time, except for those rare cases where we have that dog with that severe behavior issue that needs a correction right then and there because it's trying to eat me. 95% of the time, though, that correction, that tool, whatever that is, that can't happen until we've taught what's actually expected. It's not fair to give a correction to a dog if they don't actually understand what they're supposed to be doing.
They don't know their
That's why this study is bogus.
Yep. If dogs don't know their expectation, there's no way you're helping your dog succeed. Like you're again, your dog needs to know when they're making a mistake and when they're not. Okay, you have to be clear with your dog.
Jerry,
You have to tell them how to win the game.
Jerry maybe train with a slip lead before anything else.
Yep.
I have to know how to, I know, have to know how
Look
to
at that balance trainer there. Look at her not going straight to tools, you know? And that's me too, guys. I assess every dog before I apply any tools. I will spend an hour with your dog before I put a prong collar on your dog. It's not my go-to here, slap this on your dog, I'm going to fix it. It's not. I start my dogs off with a slip lead if needed. I will do flat collar, leash, and treats, condition behavior, and and commands through that. And then if I notice the dog is not food motivated and not responding well to the leash pressure and completely distracted and scanning everything and just being fast, then I would move on to tools if needed.
Right.
But there are trainers out here who go straight to tools. They don't even know how to properly use the tool. There's actually one of my competitors here, and I will call him a competitor because I would never send the client that way. They're competitors, and then there's my trainers out here, my world. I recommend any balance trainer out here. I recommend positive trainers out here as long as I see the work and I can refer you to someone. I will. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but I will find a trainer that is. So, excuse me. I lost my train of thought just now. Just the wine's getting to me now. No, but consistency and repetition and structure and tools and dog training.
So does hand feeding fall under pure positive as well?
Hand feeding is just, it's just a technique. I wouldn't call it purely positive because it's feeding. So
I hand feed too.
I think that's what people think when they hear balanced training. They think, oh, not relationship building. But it is. Like, that's how we condition this stuff. And when you hear like the positive, people think like it's all the good stuff, treats, hand feeding, relationship building, singing kumbaya. Like, we do that too. We just also say no. It's marketing. And that's why I love TikTok so much right now, because they can only censor so much.
Yeah.
Right.
And right now it's like you have your ZGs out here, if you know who I'm talking about. ZG. Okay, purely positive male trainer out here.
I know who you're talking about.
I probably have them blocked.
You look confused. So like trainers like that, like that's for marketing, guys. That's to sell you treats, to sell you bark box, to sell you this, to sell you that. It's in order to watch a ZG video, you have to put it up with like an hour of advertisement before it even starts, because that's a sellout trainer right there. That's a trainer that's doing it for the money and not for the dogs. Okay.
I would send my dog to Michelle Sullivan.
Oh yes, I thought you were about to say ZG. I'm like,
no, I would send. I would send 11 to Michelle Sullivan.
I leave my dogs with Michelle.
Listen, the point of this podcast, and just to clarify, we are not pure positive hating people. And while I think there's definitely a huge divide, and I do think there's a war that needs to be fought and won, and here's my reason. It's not to come out victorious on top of the pure positive. It's to stand by our tools and our methodology so that the dogs still have
our results and the science behind our training.
I don't want to take away from what pure positive trainers are doing. I don't want them to not have a job, because there are some good ones out there. There's some that aren't sellouts. There's some that are passionate about the dogs, but their methodology is just how they do it.
And in case you guys didn't know, Rachel's training, Alexa's training, and my training revolves around positive training as well. Okay, we use so much positive reinforcement during our training. We use treats, we use motivation, we use verbal cues, we use a lot of positive in our training. And
here's a perfect example.
Most balanced trainers.
Perfect example. I have a board and trained dog in right now, and I worked with him for 3.5 hours today. We went to location number 1 was a park with a lot of geese and people walking around. We were doing some pressure testing because he struggles with birds. And he struggles with people sneaking up on him. So we were hanging out there in a downstay. Location number 2, we went to kind of like an outlet, like a mall, and we were walking around there because he lives in a city. So I wanted to replicate people coming in and out of stores and people sneaking up. Location number 3 was the house working with him. In the 3.5 hours of training, he got 1 correction on a number 4, a 4 out of 100, and the rest of the day was filled with good boy, yay, Brad, here's a treat. Like, it was 99% positive reinforcement and building him up and letting him know you can do this, man. Like, I believe
That's how
in
it
you.
should be. That's how it
Feel
should
the
be.
sky
That's
a
how
lot.
it should be. That's exactly
One
how it should
correction. One.
So when you guys research trainers and you're looking for a balanced trainer, if your dog trainer doesn't say good boy and do any of that shit, run. Okay, your trainer shouldn't be yelling at your dog. Your trainer shouldn't be yanking and cranking collars and leashes. Your trainer shouldn't be putting aversive equipment on any dog during an evaluation. So speak to your trainer, sit and talk to your trainer. If you can't sit here and have an actual conversation with this person and all you hear is, yes, if you sign your dog up today, they'll be off leash in 2 weeks, guaranteed, no matter what, any age, any size. Stop it. That is not, do not pay online or in person if you are fucking getting this advice or this evaluation. Okay, this is not, dog training is not a cookie cutter thing. I literally sit with each and every one of my clients and we talk and we come up with a training plan. And I literally say, okay, well, your dog may require these certain tools. Your dog may require, this kind of exposure. Your dog may require you to do 17 lessons after he comes home because I want your dog to succeed. So,
Right. It's working the dog in front of you.
yes. Every dog is different, just like every child is different. And if you are a teacher, if you're a preschool to a kindergarten to first grade teacher, you will know that in your classroom, there's always 2 kids that stand the fuck out, right? Those 2 kids don't learn the way the other kids do. Those 2 kids are a pain in the ass. Those 2 kids have too much energy. Those 2 kids never stand still because those 2 kids are diagnosed with ADHD and they don't learn the same way the other 30 kids do, okay? So those 2 kids have to be taken out of class and given individual training plans and given whatever because parents want them to succeed and teachers want them to succeed. And they understand that those dogs don't learn, those kids don't learn the same way as the other children in the class.
Saying your analogies, Norca.
Sorry, dogs, kids, same thing.
Same thing.
The only difference is I like dogs. Like,
Go, Alexis.
Yeah, can we take a second too, because this gets messed up a lot. And I see a lot, especially recently, of our pure positive side starting to label themselves as science-based training, which is like a huge marketing tool, I feel like. And to actually take a second to explain kind of the 4 quadrants of behavior as well, because it gets messed up.
There's 4, not just 1?
There's 4.
I've heard of purely positive here. I've heard of positive reinforcement. What are the other 3? Can you explain?
Tell us.
Yes. And oh my God, now I'm on the spot. So, and they get messed up so often because people, one, think positive means good, negative means bad, which isn't how it actually works
How does it work? How does it work?
in our quadrants of behavior. So positive is the addition of something, negative is the removal of something. So positive reinforcement is adding something to increase the desired behavior. So giving a treat to get the dog to consistently sit, positive reinforcement. Negative reinforcement is the removal of something to increase the desired behavior.
So if the dog doesn't sit, what happens there?
They don't get the treat.
Woo-hoo-hoo! Woo! Hey, you're not a dog trainer. Back up, B. Back up.
And like, so negative reinforcements, and you guys have seen my anxious German Shepherd that I'm working with that's scared of the world. I use tons of negative reinforcement with her because she shuts down so much she won't take food. So I can't use a lot of positive reinforcement to start because she won't take a reward. She has no interest in the addition of something. And so for her, it's a little bit of leash pressure. As soon as she moves into me, pressure is gone.
And that's the positive.
And that's the reward, is the pressure goes away. So that's our negative reinforcements to increase the behavior of coming to me.
Stop talking doggy to me, girl. Stop talking doggy to me. Stop it.
So
right now.
nothing negative or punishment there. Positive punishment is the addition of a stimulus to decrease an undesired behavior. So that could be whatever correction. So our e-collar correction, leash pressure, a leash correction to decrease the dog pulling or to decrease the dog refusing to recall.
Would
And then
stepping into their space be considered that? Because I know,
Spatial
If it holds value for the dog,
yeah.
spatial pressure can be, it depends on the interaction and the dog.
Okay.
yeah, I would say spatial pressure often would be like a positive punisher because
I would consider it punishment, positive punishment. Yes.
Okay.
yeah,
Sorry.
because we're adding body pressure to decrease the undesired behavior of like breaking place. And then our negative punisher is the weird, bizarre one to wrap your head around, which is the removal of stimulus to increase
The likelihood of the behavior.
the likelihood of the behavior. That's the one that's difficult.
This
I
is
don't
why people are
understand.
confused. This is exactly why people are confused, because when you say negative, you think, oh shit, no, all bad.
Right.
Negative is a math equation when it comes to dog training. It's to take away. Okay, so you're taking away a treat, you're taking away a praise, you're taking away something the dog finds valuable.
So like when I take away freedom because they're being
Punishment there.
And I could totally get why all this shit's confusing.
Confusing.
Because I get tripped up on it too. You could see it in my face. I'm sitting here really trying to follow.
And this is also
Like,
a human
obviously, I
study.
know what I'm doing. I do it. It's a pain in the ass to explain. And when you hear it, I can understand why it's not well received.
And it's exactly what it is. It's misinterpreted. That's why
Right.
the whole purely positive thing, it is a marketing thing. It is to sell things. It is to up the sugar coating of everything, right? When it comes to the balance stuff, it's people have a hard time of understanding the quadrants.
Right, because they hear
Reinforcement
negative.
is part of that. So as a balance trainer, we use positive reinforcement. We also use negative reinforcement, positive punishment, and negative punishment. So there's 4 quadrants to that. And if your purely positive trainer can't explain all 4 of those quadrants to you, then they can't explain how your dog learns.
Right.
Period.
They have to be willing to address them all. And once again, like, just to restate, we are not hating on pure
not at all.
positive. There is room for it in the dog training world. When it comes to behavioral cases, which is what most balance trainers deal with, is the leftover dogs that didn't qualify for the store training, that are adult dogs now, that are rescues, that have behavioral issues. That's the dogs we get. If I get a puppy, I'm freaking thrilled.
And throwing treats left and right, and then praising and all positive everything.
all they want to do is eat anyway.
Right.
It's we're, and that's why we talk about, and everybody's like, oh, you guys never talk about it too. Well, because that's what we're dealing with all the time. If I had a bunch of puppies, which we did in the summer after COVID, guess what? Most of my content was about it. If you didn't know, we would have come off as a positive trainer.
Yep.
So it's never coming across as like the war should not be between
trainers,
the sides, because we all have the same cause. It's the dogs. But the war should be between limiting beliefs, because that's what's dangerous. And limiting beliefs are always dangerous, not in every facet, not just dog training.
And another thing I think is that people need to really understand that there are different worlds to training. When you say I need a dog trainer, there's so many places you go.
Oh yeah, like if you just put in dog training, you get like 900 responses in
right.
Google. And if you don't know what kind,
are you looking for behavioral? Are you looking for obedience? Are you looking for tricks training? Are you looking for, like, there's so many. Are you looking for therapy dog, service dog, ESL?
Right.
What kind of training are you looking for? You have to make sure that I have a 5-month-old puppy who keeps biting at everything. Okay, you can go to a PetSmart trainer, because that's just teething and mouthing, and that's totally normal for a 5-month-old puppy to be doing. But if you come to me with I have a 5-month-old lab that just like lunged at my other dog, and then I took it to a dog park and it lunged at every dog there, and it's really aggressive, and I go see this dog and it's fucking aggressive, like, that's genetics, and that's something that we have to handle a whole different way. Okay, 5-month-old puppy should not be showing aggression, not to the levels where he's attacking other dogs. So that would require a whole lot of rehabilitation, even for a 5-month-old dog. And it might require tools. It might require telling your dog no. It might require isolating, restricting, and limiting things for your dog. It might require structure and balance in order for this dog to succeed. And by the 8th month, already be like, oh yeah, I know what to do, you know? But
I think you guys knock it on the head. Like, I'm thinking about it in my head as we stay here the last couple minutes, and I'm like connecting all these dots. And like you're saying, positive trainer a lot of times comes off as like a sales pitch, and like they're trying to sell you on something. And then Alexis commented on how it's now going into being called science-based training. And I've heard it gets called force-free training often. It gets training with compassion, humane training, all these different names. And first of all, labels are annoying as shit. Second
labels
of all,
belong on milk cartons, guys, not on people and
you're
dogs.
making Google searches a pain in the butt by all these different names.
Real.
And third, go ahead.
Alexis.
I feel like some of these labels are also demonizing the other side.
Yes,
Like,
that's what I was just gonna say.
I have an issue with positive only trainers. I have a few positive only trainers that I like am glued to their content, taking notes.
But are they
So
purely
much
positive
respect for
though?
them.
Because a lot of the purely positive that I think are purely positive are not. They're balanced trainers who just don't realize that they're balanced trainers.
Right. Or yeah. So there's some of that. There's some of them that
use redirection, they use all this stuff. So I understand you use mostly food and mostly like your tone and mostly, you don't rely on slip leads and prong collars and e-collars and all that, but there's a little force behind your leash when you're correcting a dog.
Right.
So
that's balanced. My favorite part. My favorite thing I comment back whenever people are like, oh, I would never use the prong collar to redirect my dog. That's inhumane. I'm like, oh, so you never leash your dog up? Where do you think you're doing without leash pressure? Mm-hmm. You are communicating and you're using pressure to communicate with your dog. I use a prong collar because it's more precise communication. But if you want to keep using that flat buckle collar because of the trachea, you don't care about the trachea, go right ahead. You're doing the same thing. It's communication. And you're right. There's a lot of positive trainers that they're pretty much balanced trainers. They just don't use e-collars, but they're using the same methodology. Yep. And it's balancing things out. It's keeping those scales in mind. It's interacting with your dog in a different way.
Telling the dog yes, telling the dog okay, telling the dog good.
Yeah. So there are some trainers that label themselves, maybe is a better way to say it, as positive only or positive reinforcement based trainers. And I have zero problem with that. And there's a few that I have huge amounts of respect for and learn a lot from. But then we're starting to see kind of this movement towards, things being labeled as I'm humane dog trainer or force-free dog training, which in and of itself isn't necessarily a bad thing. But then you see it being used as, well, this is humane training and this is inhumane training.
Right.
Exactly.
And it's labeling even those of us that are humane balanced trainers, that are non-compulsive trainers. Like, at this point, it's just, are you a compulsion-based trainer? No?
So Lima is something that gets thrown around.
Ladies.
Lima is something that gets thrown around. Lisa.
He's trying to get us to wrap it down. So we have to go to question.
All right. We are well past our hour mark. So we got to wrap this up. Do you guys have any? You guys have?
I was gonna say I have that exit question we can go with. So we'll keep it short and sweet because we're getting over our time limit. At least we cut it down off of last week. It's shorter than last week. So
we'll get better, guys. We'll get better.
Norca and Alexis, methodology aside, what is something you think all dog trainers should or would agree on? For me, it's that you have to find a motivator for the dog that's in front of you in order to get them willing to work.
For me, it would be consistency. You have to be consistent to do what you're asking your dog to do and how you're asking your dog to do it and how we're delivering it. And it's consistency. If it gets done every day and you build a repetition and you build a routine and predictability, you're going to have success. So consistency for me.
Yeah, I guess I've got kind of two thoughts.
Sure.
Oh my God, girl, we don't have time for that.
I'll make it fast. Don't pressure me, God. So one that like there's no instant fix. Like there's no instant fix magic button that's just gonna make the dog instantly
get build overnight.
Better. So there's no overnight results. And then I would say kind of the other thing that like any good trainer should agree on is we're all in this for the benefit of the dog.
Yes.
And if you're
I know
a
I
trainer,
am.
you're in it to save dogs' lives and help dogs and people have better lives together.
Yeah,
And if
100%.
that's not why you're doing it, you shouldn't be doing it.
100%.
Yeah, my goal is to help people cohabitate with their dogs peacefully and stress-free. So stressful to have a dog, it's stressful to have kids, it's stressful to have a wife. So if your dog can stress you out a little less, I'm glad I could help.
Right.
So that is it for this week. Make sure that you go ahead and follow our social media. It'll be below, as well as you can find it on our website. Our website is letstalkdogpodcast.com.
It's so long.
That is also all of our social media handles is Let's Talk Dog Podcast.
I love you
We
guys.
do have merch. Merch is available. There will be a link below. Go forth, support us. We also have a Patreon, and that Patreon will get you early release of our podcast, as well as lengthy videos of us messing everything up.
I want to
blooper
throw
reels.
in some consultations in there too, but we'll talk about that.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. Yes, stay tuned,
There'll be
folks.
other cool perks along the line.
There
Yep.
will be. There will be.
We're a work in progress, people.
But right now, our Patreon is $5 flat. That's it. It's just a $5 fee. There may be more tiers added later on, but for right now, that's all we got. So please make sure you support us. Go follow everyone's individual social medias, as well as Let's Talk Dog Podcast. And we will see you guys next week.
Bye, guys.
Alexis, do your wave.
Love you. Bye.